Hi, I'm Rick DeSanctis, and you're watching The Catholic Shepherd. Thank you for tuning in again. This is our 9th episode, if you can believe that. We started back in January of 2019, and we're on our 9th issue already. Hope you're enjoying them. So every month we like to talk about the Catechism of the Catholic Church. This book right here, it's called the Catechism of the Catholic Church. Why this book is so important is because the average Catholic does not know their faith. And they're always asking questions about why we do what we do, when we do it, and where we do it. And the answers to that, people go to priests, they go to the Pope, they go to bishops, and they always get confused, and they don't know who they should actually listen to. So the answer to those questions, or the answers I should say, is in the Catechism. The Catechism is like the Bible of what we do. It's not the Bible. Of course the Bible is the most important book. But in here, there is an index. So you pick a word, I don't know, marriage. You look in here and you can find out all about marriage, why we get married, where marriage comes from, where it is in the Bible, why the church teaches and professes what she does. Why am I saying marriage? Because today I have a special guest with me. His name is Mark Monastiero. He's going to talk a little bit about marriage and annulments. That's right, scary word, annulments. I too had an annulment in my day, and a lot of Catholics wonder about that. Should I be receiving communion? Should I be going to church? Should I get an annulment? Is it foolish? Does it make sense? Well, we're going to talk about it today. So guys, stay tuned. And if you don't believe or you want to question something about what I am saying or Mark's saying, get yourself a catechism, sit down, study it. Don't trust me. Find out what's going on within the Catholic Church. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with Mark. Hey guys, welcome back to The Catholic Shepherd. I'm your host, Rick DeSanctis. Hope you enjoyed that quick little monologue and the commercial. We're talking about marriage today and annulments and where do we go from there in divorce. But I have an awesome guest here today who's going to lead perfectly into that. I have with me the one and only Mark Monastiero.
Good to see you, Rick.
I want to say I met this guy about 15 years ago.
Yes.
Yep, stumbled across our men's group, which is Magis Christi.
Yes.
You came in, we met through friends, we'll just say it at that.
Yes.
So this goes out all over the United States, it's not just here in Saugus. Okay. So when you're talking, and I don't say Saugus, just let it be out there that you're not even from Saugus anymore, you live in Florida.
Yes, Benita Springs.
And you came home just to do the show.
Yes.
All right, so we're going to start there at the beginning. I was excited to have Mark on today because he's a brother. I like to call him a brother. He's not my brother, but he's a brother. Met 15 years ago and we share the faith, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I'm going to start at the beginning like I always do. Have you always been a Christian?
Yes.
For those of you who don't know what a Christian is, it's someone who follows Christ. And why I say that is I'm driving my motorcycle a couple of weeks ago and a woman pulls me over and she sees a patch that I have on in case you haven't seen it. And she said, "Oh, I love your patch." And I said, "Yeah, it's called the Catholic Shepherd." And she's like, "Oh, I'm Christian, not Catholic." For those of you who are not Catholics, Catholics are Christians. We are Catholic Christians. A Methodist Christian is a Methodist Christian and so forth. So anyways, did you always grow up in the Catholic Church?
I did, yes.
Okay. Did you start praying when you were a kid? Like, let's start the journey off. Tell me a little bit about your childhood.
Well, childhood, my mom had 4 boys, 3 of us in 13 months. I have a set of twins. My younger brother was born 3 years later. And she was ill for quite a while, so I was actually raised the first 3 or 4 years of my life by my grandparents. My grandparents were very devout Catholics, and at age 3 or 4, I can remember going to church with my grandfather on a daily basis, actually, over in Everett, Mass. And that instilled things in me that when I was very young, I was very comfortable with, and studied my grandfather when he would pray, what he would do to teach me how to behave at the church that we went to, and it grew from there.
Very nice. So we like to call people like you cradle Catholics. You've always been a Catholic. Have you had your moments throughout your life where you've questioned your faith?
Never questioned my faith, but questioned why I would have questions, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, go get into that. Like what?
So,
Give me something.
Well, Just in general, when, we always think, or we have this idea that being Catholic and loving Jesus and having him be our Father, that we never run into problems, and that we should have an easy life. And that's really not what being a Catholic, a Christian is about. It's about Christ helping us through those hard times and having joy versus happiness, which a lot of people don't understand the distinction there either.
Good point. So let me go back for a second. So you're a young boy. How old were you when you were going to church with your grandfather?
I started at about age 3 or 4.
Age 3 or 4.
Yes.
Are you praying at that time?
No, I started praying, years later. I started doing it on a daily basis, but at that point it was just something I enjoyed.
You enjoyed going to church?
Yes.
So you're the first child that I ever heard enjoyed going to church. That's good.
Yeah.
So let's get to the point where you start to develop a little bit of prayer. And what I mean by that is I can remember being a 6-year-old child sitting there with my mother and saying basic prayers. Bless mommy, bless daddy, bless grampy. Any of that going on?
Yes.
Basic stuff? So you
Yes.
were praying. You were praying as a
Yes,
child.
with my grandfather.
Okay. So then you get a little bit older and your prayer becomes a little bit more mature.
Yes.
Okay. When does that happen? High school, college, where are you?
At around age 13,
Okay.
12, 13 years old.
And what happens at 12, 13? Where are you?
I am living in Saugus with my parents and splitting time between my parents and grandparents, and my grandfather in particular had instilled, Jesus is always with you, and talk to him as best I could. I didn't really understand prayer per se, but I would talk to Jesus as I would him, or as I'm doing with you now.
So this is a compliment called blind faith.
Yes.
Someone told you something, you believed it, and you went with it.
Yes.
Love that. So that's what faith is, and we are saved by faith. A lot of non-Catholics will say that's the answer. Saved by faith, faith alone. Well, faith is important, but you kind of have to participate. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. So at this point, you start to mature in your faith and your walk. You're not really thinking much about it as a studied Catholic,
Correct.
but maybe as somebody, I'd say most Catholics don't know why they are Catholic. Would you agree?
I agree.
Yeah, they kind of don't know their faith. I'm not Dr. Scott Hahn. I am not a professor, but we always start the show off with the catechism, which I always get into. And the reason I do that is Catholics don't know why they are Catholics. They were told by their grandparents. They were told to go to church. They were told to listen to the priest, go receive communion, and do all these things. And Protestants, non-Catholics, will rip us apart when it comes to Scripture because for whatever reason we don't study Scripture. We'll get into that later. But we are entrenched in Scripture. And everything we believe has to do with the church and the Bible and what Jesus taught. But the average Catholic doesn't know that, and the Protestant or the non-Catholic doesn't realize that either, which I'm going to get to with you when we go to the annulment process, which is kind of important. So in high school, were you still going to church, or did you stop? Or
No, in high school I went weekly. I would go on Sundays or Saturday evenings, and that was my time. And I was really the only one that did that in my family. Most believed in God, yet they were not churchgoers.
brothers, sisters?
I have 3 younger brothers.
Yeah, and none of them were going.
No.
So you went on your own.
Yes.
So I like that. So you were a man of faith. So you stepped out, and a lot of people will call us crazy because we're believing in something that we can't see.
Yes.
Okay? It's not easy to be a person of faith. It doesn't even matter if you're a Catholic at all. If you just any Christian out there, a Methodist, a congregational person, anybody who's out there, it's hard to stand our ground because people will look at you and they will laugh at you. And this is where faith takes over. But there needs to be a little bit of reason. There needs to be reason. You don't just go into something fully blind. You know in your heart, maybe not in your head, something's up, and you kind of follow it, correct?
Correct.
All right. So let's move forward. Did you go to college?
I did.
Okay, while you're in college, did you have your crazy days, or did you lose your faith at all? I mean, most of my guests, they kind of go, well, during college I did a little bit of this and a little bit of that. I did.
No, college, I would drive to Merrimack, which I went to in North Andover. I would drive home.
Merrimack, Mass?
Actually, in North Andover, Mass,
Okay.
Merrimack College.
Okay.
And I would travel back and forth. I didn't live there, and would split time between my family and my grandparents' home. But I wasn't a wild teenager. I played a lot of sports.
Yeah, that was a Catholic college though, right?
Jesuit.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so.
Yeah.
All right, so you were entrenched in it.
Yes.
Let's move on. Did you end up getting married and having kids?
I did. I got married back in 1986, and we had a daughter, Danielle. And we were married for almost 14 years and then got divorced.
Okay, so you got divorced. I want to stop at this point. Now, most of our shows, I kind of give the guest all the time he or she wants. But Mark and I were talking earlier about this. It needs to be addressed because in this day and age, I think it's 50% of men and women get divorced.
Sad.
In the United States.
Yes.
I am not on my holy high horse because I too was one of those people who got divorced. Swore I would never get divorced. And then the Catholic Church proposes this thing called an annulment, which sounds like the dumbest thing I had ever heard in my life. How did you feel about when you heard that?
Well, I felt, annulment, that's great because I can get remarried in the church.
Remarried was your thought?
Yes.
May I interrupt?
Yes.
So, what the Catholic Church proposes is that the word annulment is the sacrament. The special moment never took place. Now, something did take place. There was a ceremony, but there was no sacrament, which we'll get into in a whole other show. But you have to kind of come to terms with that. You have to understand it intellectually, and you have to understand it in your heart. We were talking about this earlier, and I have to bring this up because there's a lot of Catholics out there that are living in a situation that maybe they shouldn't be, and they don't want to hear me right now. What I'm saying right now might be a little bit offensive, and sometimes the truth hurts. It's not intended to hurt. It's intended to readjust. And I will get back to that and the authority of the church in a moment. I want to get to you. You get divorced. Then you meet the love of your life. What's her name?
Deanna.
Deanna. I
Yes.
know she's the love of your life because you talk about her all the time.
Yes.
You marry her, but you don't marry her in the Catholic Church.
Correct.
You were divorced.
Yes.
And
As
then
she was as well. Rick.
She was also divorced.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so what happens then? I want to talk about this. What happens in your heart at this point? Are you thinking about it? Do you care? Is it even on your mind?
I thought about it briefly, yet when the people would say to me, well, you can't get an annulment because you have a child, and that would deem that, they had certain things they would say about having a child and having an annulment, because how can you do that if you were married and had a kid? You can't pretend it didn't happen.
I'm going to go there for you.
Yes.
People would say to you, oh, that makes that child a bastard child.
Yes.
I know you didn't want to say that, but you know
Yes.
what? We need to address these things. We
Yeah.
talk about everything, abortion, you name it.
Right.
But it does not make your child that word.
Correct.
The child happened. The child is blessed. God takes crooked lines and makes them straight. So let's, for the record, say that. Continue.
Yes. Thank you. And I always thought about annulment. I really, as a Catholic, but really not someone who understood what it was about, said, well, maybe at some point. I had mentioned it to Deanna. She was afraid of it. To proceed with it, to proceed with an annulment, because she really didn't understand it, and she had the same thought process as I did. What does this mean about the original marriage? And you have a child, and it was a bit confusing for us. So we waited for quite a while before we reapproached that.
You and I actually had a conversation one night.
We did?
You laughed at me. I laughed at you, and I said, well, if you want to continue to live in sin,
Yes.
I know this sounds funny. He remarries, but he doesn't get married in the church. And I said, well, technically, you're committing adultery. And he's like, oh, Rick, let's be serious, right?
Yeah.
That was your exact comment. Let's be serious. Come on now.
Yes.
And I said, well, I am being serious because truth is truth, opinion's opinion.
Right.
And there is no such thing as divorce in the Bible. We can go there, and I don't care what denomination you are, there's no such thing.
Right.
It doesn't happen. So I want to address this for a moment. So, as I do in every show, I talk about the authority of the Catholic Church. When Jesus looks at Peter and he says, who do people say that I am? And Peter goes, you're the Christ. And Jesus said, good for you, son of Bar-Jonah. Because of this, I am going to give you the authority to bind and loose. I'm going to give you the keys to heaven. His exact words were, I'm going to give you the authority to bind. Whatever is bound on earth is bound in heaven. Whatever is loosed on earth is loosed in heaven. At that moment, giving man the authority to bind and loose. Don't trust me. Go to your catechism. This is the conversation that Mark and I had.
Yes.
Now, at that point, I kind of let him be. I didn't want to scold him again. I'm not a theologian. but I was studying at the time, and I was going through the same process, and it's not a fun thing. It's something that needs to be addressed, and as my old friend Father Karapi used to say, you can pay me now, or you can pay me later. So you deal with it now, or you deal with it later. And you decided to deal with it, and you went forward.
Yes.
Painful.
Yes.
Very painful to go through.
Yes.
Are you glad that you went through the annulment?
Absolutely.
What was the result internally over this? Like, how did you feel, and what happened physically? What did you do after? Tell me about the process.
The process mentally was hard because you had to look at the reasons why the marriage really, initially with Danielle's mom, wasn't a marriage per se, and had to go through the process of explaining that, going to the tribunal, having friends who knew us explain the 14 years that we were together and prior to that. And that was a hard process because you really had to look at yourself in the mirror and realize what it was all about.
Yeah. That's a painful thing to do, to look at one's self, to look at yourself and say, why did this fail? Does the church really have the authority to undo this? And am I really going to do this again? Like, is this crazy? And the argument that people make is, the church is just looking for money. She just wants you to pay thousands of dollars. No, that's not true, my friends. The truth is that there is a suggested donation. I want to say it was about $700, something in that neighborhood.
Exactly right, yes.
And you don't have to pay that. It's like anything else. You're going to a lawyer, you should pay the lawyer. You're going to a tribunal. And as far as the church being very wealthy, well, she is, but there are times that we need to make donations for certain things, so it's kind of irrelevant. But the process is painful.
Yes.
And then once you get through the process, the church deems that you are free to do whatever you want to do, correct?
Correct.
So you decided to do what?
We had a friend, priest friend of ours, and Father Rich O'Brien, and we asked him if he would be willing to marry us. Not remarry, as I found out later.
Well said.
And we did so, and it was a beautiful ceremony. And at that point, I knew that I was married in the eyes of God, not as the world looks at it, yet
Civilly.
Civilly, thank you. Yet in the eyes of the church, in the eyes of God, and it really, I had quite a sense of peace, and it really felt that now we truly were married, because a lot of people just think it's a piece of paper. Those who really don't understand what marriage is and represents.
Correct. Well put, Mr. Monastiero. Again, I'm far from perfect, and I have my own issues, and I try to go to confession weekly, and I try to receive the Eucharist in a state of grace. And I think you do too.
Yes.
And people, again, on the outside of the church will laugh at that. In fact, many in the Catholic Church will laugh at that, and that makes me sick to my stomach, because they don't know why they're Catholic and what the church teaches. There's nothing in the quote-unquote handbook that is to offend us or to hurt us. It's all there to help us. It's always to realign us. So would you agree that by you getting your annulment, you were realigned, you weren't reprimanded or browbeat into taking care of what needed taken care of, right?
Yes, and the process and the people involved at the tribunal stage, and our priest was very helpful. They educated us, and they were allowed to really reteach us what we were doing and why we were doing it. So it made the process easier to handle.
Sure. And the church, in her wisdom, is very smart, even when she does dumb things. And right now in the church, I want to share this as well, there's a mess going on in the church. It's the elephant in the room. We all know the church is a mess, but guess what? The church has always been a mess from day one. It only affirms more that it's the true church. The church has been attacked from the evil one since the very day, since the Garden of Eden. It was the most beautiful place on earth. Evil. Since Jesus had died on the cross, evil. All kinds of schisms have happened. Evil, constantly trying to destroy what is good. It only affirms the fact that the Catholic Church is the church created by Christ. Again, people, not putting down all Christians. There is some truth in everything, but there is only all truth somewhere. Learn that, find out where that is. And again, by all means, pick up a catechism, challenge what I'm saying. Don't trust me. All right, so you have your annulment. You then get married in the Catholic Church.
Yes.
You are technically now married in the eyes of God.
Yes.
Did you end up having more children?
No, we did not.
Good for you. I say that as a joke. I couldn't do any more right now. You have no more children, and you continue. You continue to go on your men's group. I know you moved to Florida a few years ago, but before that, I like to talk on every show about the retreat called Cursillo.
Yes.
Now, for those of you who don't know, Cursillo is something that we as Catholics go to. You don't even have to be a Catholic. You can be a non-Catholic. You go. And I like to say that it's a 4-day shot of adrenaline to wake you up out of the sleep that you've been in the coma your whole life. Would you agree?
Yes.
Yeah. So you think you know your faith, you think you understand, and then the Holy Spirit pops up and blows you away.
Yes.
Agreed?
Agreed.
I'm going to try and stop talking. I'm going to give it to you. Tell me how you felt prior to the Thursday of going and that Thursday, and then we'll get into Sunday. Start there.
I felt very confident because all of my brothers had gone through Carmelite, and it was something that I wanted to do, yet had a lot of questions, was trying to go in without judgment. As you had mentioned to me, Mark, try not to judge or have expectation.
Very hard.
And when I went in, nervous. First night there, which was a Thursday, I looked around the room, realized how many people were there, and we were all there for the same reason, whatever that is. And between Thursday and Sunday, as you said, Rick, it was an awakening. For me, it was a bit of a transformation. It reemphasized and acknowledged some of the things I wondered about. And it was really a re-education and grounded me more in the Holy Spirit than I ever had been.
Can I ask you, how did you feel Thursday, and what's the difference on Sunday? That's kind of what I want to see from you. So you go in there.
Yeah.
You've always had faith, as we know. Why should one go on Cursillo? Because you walk there Thursday, and you're like, I don't know why I'm here, and you're feeling hesitant.
Right.
How do you feel as a Catholic on Thursday, and how do you feel as a Catholic on Sunday?
You go in really as people who could be friends, but they're really strangers to you. You walk out as brothers, I felt, and that love of Christ and the Holy Spirit was evident there every day, and some of the very special things that happen there re-emphasize to you what it's all about, really give you hope for the future, and you have a faith, yet it reestablishes, I think, in a very strong way why you feel the way you do, and it educates you on many things that I'm still learning about.
Yeah. So simply put, when you go on this retreat called Cursillo, you kind of go into it, like as we all do, we're very hesitant, especially as men. What am I doing? What am I getting myself into for a weekend, right?
Yes.
And then Sunday comes, and you kind of look at things a little bit differently. You're a little bit gentler. Your heart's a little bit softer. It's not as, you're not clinched up saying,
Right.
you know, you're more comfortable walking around almost like a madman for Christ. Is that fair to say?
You're on fire.
Like,
Absolutely.
You're on fire. And people don't know what to do with you. They don't know what to do with someone who just comes back from a Cursillo.
Yes.
So in Cursillo, they suggest that you have a group to go to, which is where our group Magis Christi came from.
Yes.
And you should, after that, feel the desire to know, love, and serve Christ better, which is the tripod, which is your action, your piety, and your study.
Yes.
And I can speak for myself. What has come from that is that, you know, you try to be a little bit less afraid of what people think. You know, here we are, we're on TV. We do radio, we do newspapers, and that's what we're called to do.
Yes.
Which I want to get into where you're at now. So do you do any special ministries in your own life? And if you can't think of any, I'm going to point them out for you.
I do in Florida give Eucharist to a nursing home that has Alzheimer's patients.
So you're an extraordinary
folks.
minister.
Yes.
And for those of you who don't know what that means, you walk up to the priest, you have a little pyx, which is a cup. You put Jesus inside.
Yes.
And you bring him to the sick and the homebound.
Correct.
Beautiful. Go ahead.
Yes. And with the jobs that I have, and I do work a few in Florida, with customers that may come into where I go to, a lot of them are going through struggles. A lot of them are Catholic. They wear their cross proudly. And we will strike up a conversation where I can really minister to them and sometimes answer questions for them briefly about their faith or what they're feeling.
Sure, very nice. And is your wife on board with all this now? Like, she knows who you are? I mean, she doesn't need to be like you. Our wives don't have to be like us.
Yes, she is a believer. She loves Jesus, and she's at a different point than I am. Yet our lives were very different growing up, and we're what we've experienced to this point.
Yeah. And you say she's at a different point. She's no better or no worse. I like to say that because sometimes spouses think, "Oh, you know more than me." No, it's we're at a different place on the road.
Exactly.
The road might be out there. It's not here or here.
Right.
We're just in different places, and that's where we're supposed to be.
Yes.
Exactly where we're supposed to be in our life. So you're a businessman as well. Do you find it hard, and I know you do, I just want to ask, do you find it hard incorporating the two, trying to be a good Christian in the world and conducting business at the same time?
You do at times, yes, because the outside world looks at business as you do whatever you need to,
Yeah.
aside from what's right or wrong or what may be just. So you really have to balance that with who you are as a Catholic.
Sure.
And what you want to do, because we're all doing things now that all for God's glory. That's what we're always supposed to do.
While you're at work, though, I'm sure you've at times taken a beating verbally, or just even if from your family, right?
Yes.
Do you enjoy it? I kind of enjoy it.
It's beating, maybe the wrong word, yet they're not again at a level where I am. And as you said, there are many Catholics who really don't understand why they believe, or if they have doubts, and especially those who aren't on fire for Christ. It's even harder for them because the outside world may not share. Many of them share that opinion, many of them don't.
Yeah. All right, so you know what? We're only coming up in a couple of minutes here right now. You're the perfect guest to do this with today, so I'm sorry to take so much of your time, but I have to today because I'm feeling lately that, especially we're in the year 2019 right now, and there are scandal after scandal after scandal going on. And people leave the church to go to find something else.
Yes.
Something that tastes good or feels good. They're looking for sugar. I want to feel good. I want that high. And I always say to people, you know what? Vegetables sometimes taste gross. I don't like vegetables. I can't stand vegetables. But vegetables are good for you. Sugar is bad for you. It will make you feel good. Yeah, yay. We're all happy. But guess what? That is not what faith is about. Faith is about, it's not just having blind faith. You have to have your intellect as well with your faith. You have to know your faith. If any faith tells you to just believe just for the sake of believing, that's foolishness. You have to understand why you are what you are. If a faith tells you that you have to believe something and you look elsewhere, that's, God gave us brains to think and work stuff out, to use our intellect. So with that being said, every week I start out with the catechism. And I always say that the Catholic Church has the authority to bind and loose. It is not a knock on other churches. It is not to put anyone down. It's to say, challenge your faith wherever you are. Find out what the truth is. Because, I saw Sean Forrest. I'll do this really quick. Sean Forrest told the story. If you're in the desert and there's 3 cups of water, one is this big, one is that big, and one is this big, which cup are you going for?
The larger cup.
Why are you going for the largest cup? Because it fills you up completely.
Yes.
Is there anything wrong with the smaller cups?
No.
Nothing wrong with them. There's a little bit of truth in everything, but you want the fullness of everything.
Yes.
So I'm going to give you the last word here. Anything to say out there to people about the Catholic Church or about your faith or what people should do to come to find Jesus?
I would say go to Mass, pray, get to know Christ in your own way. There's no right or wrong. And I believe it will come to you. It will come to your heart and mind, and that's how you start.
Start the journey, right? Listen, you are an awesome first guest. Thank you so much to this guy right here for coming in, Mark Monastiero.
Appreciate it.
I wish you the very best.